Yo, what is good, dev guys? Welcome back. In this video, I want to start moving forward with our procedural IK system. There are a lot of steps that we need to complete in order to just get this tested, just get the weapon spawned in. So let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is parent our current weapon class that is inside this, but that every weapon in this project is also parented from to our class that we just wrote in C++ in the last video. So we need to go to content, weapons. And as you see, if we right click and hit the reference viewer on this puppy, you'll see that all the weapons derive from this weapon. So this is where on the left side, if you're not used to the reference viewer, this is what derives from this object, and this is what this object references. So just, I don't know how to explain it. Like left side is what references this, and right side is what this references. Hopefully it's not confusing, but yeah, so we see that all these weapons, the pistol, the rifle, and the shotgun, all use this as their base class right here. So what we want to do is change that puppy. If it'll open up, we want to change its parent class to our weapon base class. So let's go ahead and type in weapon base here, and this will give us our third person mesh and our first person mesh that we will use to attach properly to the mesh once we get to that step. Right now it has the skeletal mesh. I'm going to leave this right now so that we don't run into any compilation errors with the actual blueprint itself. We'll probably fix those in the next video. It's just not worth it right now. We just want to get this up and running. So we parented that. Now the next thing we need to think about is how this weapon actually gets added to the player. And like, if you've already been using Lyra, you probably already figured out the weapon system and how convoluted it all is. So I'm gonna go to all plugins, go to shooter core content. There's this weapons folder here, and this is where all of the weapon information is left. If I were to click in the rifle, you'll see that the rifle has this ability set. It has this actual actor that gets spawned into the world every time it's equipped and unequipped. I don't know why they did that, but I guess that's the best way to do it. It also has this instance class. This is where all of the information about the rifle is held. This tells you about the bullets per cartridge, the max damage range, the sweep radius. We got the damage fall off. We have all the animation data for the equipped animation set and the unequipped animation set. All this is a layer that gets added to the base animation blueprint, depending on which weapon and depending on a bunch of other factors. The layer gets added or linked. The correct term is linked to our animation blueprint, and then we'll be using this actual layer here instead. But yeah, all of this data is what we pull from to actually set up the the look and feel of the weapon inside the character's hands, how it's going to animate, and so on and so forth. So if I go back here, we also have all this other stuff like the abilities for firing, reloading, the damage, gameplay effects, and you see they just jumbled all this stuff into this one folder here. I just want to center our focus on this weapon instance class here, not this one per se. This is just a child of the parent. We want to go to the parent and take a look at this, because this is where all the magic happens. So this function is called activate anim layer and play paired animation. This is actually how we equip our weapon properly to our arms. This function gets fired whenever a weapon is spawned into the world. The first thing that happens is that we pick the best anim layer for it. Based on that information, whether this is a valid class, we link that anim layer class like I was saying earlier, and then we play the equip animation montage, and that all comes from the inputs here, wherever this function is called. So I think we can actually, let's look at this. Let's find a reference to where this is called, find references. So here, the event on equipped. So whenever this weapon is equipped, we determine the cosmetic tags, and then we call this macro here. And whenever it's unequipped, we also call this macro with this asset here passed in. You see, this is just a variable that they created here. I'm actually going to create these in C++. I don't know why they did it in Blueprint. I guess it was just easy to pull out and set it up in Blueprint. But I'll create these in C++ as well. So we need to actually edit this class to be compatible with first person, because everything that's happening here is just happening on the third person mesh. If we go back into this macro here, you'll see it's getting this type pawn, and the type pawn is character, and then it's just grabbing the mesh, the global mesh variable, which is the third person mesh. And there's no first person mesh even considered here. So we need to set this up to be compatible with the first person mesh. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna open up this weapon instance.h. This is found in the Lyra game folder in C++. Underneath weapons, you'll go and you'll see this Lyra weapon instance.h and CPP right there. That's what we need. So right off the bat, the first thing I noticed when coming in here is that they can't spell over there at Epic Games. You know what I'm saying? A whipped. What is this? A whipped anim set? I'm gonna put a Q here because it's bugging me. Those little squigglies bug me. I don't know what it is. I guess whoever designed this software knew that those squigglies was gonna bug me, and I was gonna pay attention to them. So I just changed the naming of these two here where they were typos basically. And so as you can see here, this is basically the same data that's inside of that blueprint, but we want to copy this and we want to make a first person version. So that obviously means that we need to convert this to a third person version. And I like to put _3p on these type of things. I should have done 2 cursors, so I only have to do that once. So we'll do that here, _1p. And now we have first person animation set, selection set, and a third person animation selection set for both unequipped and equipped states. And you're probably wondering what this struct is. This struct just holds things like the anim layer selection entry. This is just the rules for how we're going to actually apply this layer depending on tags and different things like that. We also have the anim instance that we want to use by default. If there are no rules, we'll use this by default. And then we have this function here that selects the best layer based off of an input of F gameplay tag container. This just, takes a look at all of the rules here and compares the tags, seeing if we have any comparable tags, and then returns the layer based off of that. Now you can try to, read this in English if you want, but I just understand what it does. There's no real reason to explain it right now because we're not going to actually be giving this any rules pretty much. But if we want to see what the rules look like, there is a great example inside of plugins, shooter core, weapons, and go into the rifle. Look at the rifle instance here, and you see we have this layer rules for the unequipped anim set and also the equipped. And based on this tag here, this cosmetic animation style feminine, we want to use this rifle layers _feminine. Now, if I open up your mind a little bit, and you're like, where the fuck is that tag at? This tag is actually pulled from our cosmetic system that they have set up here. Boy, I tell you, boy, it gets deep. I try to tell y'all, it gets deep. All right, so in characters cosmetics, you have these two different meshes that they use by default here. We got the female and the male, and all these are a Lyra tagged actor. Means that they have a tag that gets associated with them that we set ourselves. And you see here, one of the tags is cosmetic animation style feminine. So whenever we attach a feminine style mesh to our character class or to our character actor that gets spawned in the world, that weapon instance will read that tag and go ahead and say, oh, this is a feminine character, so let's use the feminine animation blueprint layer. But we're getting off subject. What we want to be focused on is the actual layer that we're working on here. And go back. I'm gonna close this types and the CPP as well. So yeah, let's focus up and let's get this done. So with this extra data created, now we can adjust this pick best anim layer function, which, as I showed you earlier, it just, depending on what gets returned from here, this returns the anim instance. So what gets returned from here based on that inside the weapon instance, let's go to the parent class. Whoops. Go to the parent class. And yeah, based on that, it checks if that class is even valid, and then it links that layer and plays a montage for that mesh. So this is that function here. But you see here, this is just returning one animation set or one animation layer for us, or technically the nomenclature is this Lyra animation layer selection set. It's only returning one. We needed to return two because we're going to have our first person and third person mesh. I'm sorry if I'm over explaining to you guys to understand this stuff, but I want to make sure everybody is on the same page of knowledge as me. Okay, so let's go ahead and first off, I want to change how this function works. By default, if you look in here, it just says return value here. I want this to actually be something that we understand instead of just return value. I want it to look sweet. So what I want to do is say, let's just say virtual. And let's say uparam like this, uparam, put some parentheses out there. And then we want to say display name. And this will change the return type's display name to whatever we set here in the string value. And I want to say anim layer 3p like this. So instead of just saying return value, this will say anim layer 3p. And then whenever you want to output more than one value from a blueprint node, you need to do an out parameter here. So we need to go ahead and just put a comma here, say another T subclass of, and we want to do a T subclass of, and let me make this bigger so you guys can see. Another T subclass of uanim instance, and this is going to be an output parameter, so we need an ampersand, and this is going to be called our anim layer underscore 1p for first person. And now let's just copy this from the comma all the way to the P. Go to this function here, update the data, and that should fix itself. And now we can actually get into what this function is supposed to read like. So instead of this being set to query, we're going to actually set this to query 3p because we need to make one for both third person and first person. And depending on whether or not the weapon is equipped, we want to use the equipped anim set underscore 3p or the unequipped anim set underscore 3p. I should have used my cursors again. And you can see here, because I changed the naming, it needs to read the same. Oh, or did I not change the naming of that? What? Oh, okay. I'm about to say, I thought I did change the naming. Okay, so now this set to query needs to return the right, or actually we need to give it the correct set to query variable. But before we return, we also need to go ahead and set this up for our first person. So I'm gonna say, well, I'm not going to break my back and try to type that again. Even though GitHub Copilot tried to help me, I'm gonna just go Shift End, copy this, or you can go Control D and duplicate that line. And let's do 1p here. And then let's change all of these to ones, or both of these to ones. And now our set to query 1p is based on whether it's not equipped, or we'll choose the first person or the third, or the first person equipped or the first person unequipped. And here we want to go ahead and set our anim layer 1p. We want to set this equal to, like it says here, set to query 1p. We actually want to say select best layer and give it the cosmetic tag, and that will go ahead and fill the output parameters value with whatever gets returned from this function from that struct, and then we'll also return this value right here for the main return value. So in order to get to the next step in this process here, let's make sure that we don't have any errors or anything like that. So yeah, in order to get to this next step, oh, I'm missing one thing. I want to change I want to change these values to be C++ based. So let's just go ahead and do that. What those are, U property. Let's go ahead and copy this U property declaration up here. And I want to say uanim, I think it's uanim montage. We can do a uanim montage pointer, and this is equipped anim 3p. And then we can let GitHub Copilot do the rest, really. If I just start typing this out, I think it'll understand what I'm trying to do. No? Okay. So let me paste this here. Maybe it'll understand here. Unequipped anim set 3p. Let's see if it is picking up what I'm putting out. All right. It's picking up what I'm putting out, y'all. And then let that do its thing there. So we got our equipped, unequipped, for both for first person and third person in C++. Let's go ahead and recompile this and jump back in the editor. Okay, so that successfully compiled with no errors. now we need to just go back into that instance class. So shooter core, go into weapons. Let's open up that weapon instance base. And you can see here, we now have our new node that is outputting the anim layer 1P and the anim layer 3P, which looks very nice. It looks very professional. You know what I mean? So what I want to do is move this over. And since this is kind of like, man, I don't know how you blueprint programmers do it on the day-to-day. You feel me? Like, y'all really some geniuses, because these lines be, whoo, they be throwing me off. Like, I'm so used to order of operations, like this step, this step, this step, you know? But in Blueprint, you got to go like, you know, this way or this way type thing. So what I want to do here is after we pick our best anim layer, the first thing we want to do is just, you know, promote these to a variable so that we can have them cached. So this is anim layer first person, and I'm going to promote this one to a variable as well, anim layer third person. And we'll go into both of these and just have those cached. And then I'm going to move all this stuff over because we're about to do something that looks a little bit more neat. So after we cache these, I want to do a sequence node. So I'm going to hold S, click on my blueprint viewport here. It'll create a sequence for me. The first thing I want to do is disconnect this, of course. And then we could bring this up here. And since this is not a function, I can't grab that like that, but that would be nice. We want to do a first person version or a third person version and a first person version. Let's go ahead and do it that way. So what we'll do here is check if our third person layer is valid. So we'll put that through there. If that is valid, we'll go ahead and do this. But the thing is, I don't think you can do this twice. Yeah, you can't copy this twice. So maybe I'll put this in the middle like this. Oh, hold on. That might be an issue because we kind of need this to happen twice pretty much because we want to do it for both the first person and the third person. I'm going to link this up. Would a sequence be best here? I think it still would be best because it'll run this first, output that, and then it'll run this and then output as well because you can plug in two different things to this. Let's go ahead and do it that way. And basically all I need to do is copy this. And instead of it being a third person mesh, and let me just connect everything up here. We'll go top on completed. This looks very messy, guys. Holy moly. On completed, on interrupted, on notify begin, notify end, and pass through the notification name. Uh-oh. So you can't pass through the notification name as one. So what we need to do is just add another notification name here. So I'll say notify name underscore 3P, and then we'll add one more. It's going to be a name, and we'll call it notify name underscore 1P so that we have both options there. So the top one is 3P, and then the bottom one is 1P. Okay. And let's clear this up. We'll just drag that over that and it'll change it to the first person. And now what I'm noticing here is that the mesh is messed up. So what we want to do is get type pawn, but instead of doing character, we actually want to do Lyra character. So let's grab that and then let's remove this mesh. But first, let's go ahead and say get first person mesh. And then that way we can drag this into this and then remove that. The montage to play. This is where the C++ code comes in handy. We can go ahead and grab oh no, this actually needs to come from here. So what I'm gonna do before this is actually cache this as well. So promote this to a variable and then we'll get rid of this long ass connection right here. I just don't like having this. So weird to me. So we'll grab this montage to play and pass it in right there. And realistically, we don't need this. So I'll just plug it in there. and Control D to duplicate it and plug it in there. Get rid of this strangly pin. Let's just read this and see how it's going to flow. All right, so first thing we do is we cache our weapon montage to play. Then we go ahead and we pick the best anim layer class. This will fill our variables for us here and here. Once that happens, we'll run a sequence. The first thing we'll do is a third person layer so that everybody else could see what's going on. And we check and see if that's a valid class. If that is true, we link the layer class. If not, we just go ahead and play the montage to play here. And since we're in Blueprint, this being null won't actually crash. It'll just give us like an error. It'll play the montage and then it'll go ahead and go to the next pin. It'll hit this output here, and then we'll run the next sequence, which will check the first person anim layer is valid. And instead of using the mesh, we're using the first person mesh. If this is valid, we link the layer class to the correct mesh, which is the first person mesh, and then we go ahead and play the weapon montage to play. And if not, we just play the montage and get on out of there. So now where this function is used, let me see, find references. Let's go to here. This is where we need to go ahead and run this based on whether or not this is a first person or a third person animation montage. And now that I'm looking here, we actually need to set this macro up to accept a third person or first person montage. So I'm gonna change this one to weapon montage to play. And why the hell did they do it spaced out like this? This to play, and this needs to be underscore 3p. So that'll change that. And we can actually change the name of this as well. We can also add another input value to this as well. That will be an anim montage object reference, and we can call this weapon montage to play 1p. And of course, we'll go ahead and cache that as well. So we'll have it. Don't have to do the longy, stringy thingies. So weird. And this one is going to be using third person, and this one is going to be using first person. So I'll grab. Oh, it does that automatically when you promote it to a variable. Ugh, that is disgusting. I don't know. I just got so used to the camel case that it is like, that looks weird. Okay, so we'll drag this out and replace it with the first person montage. And now when we go back to where this is used, we have an option to pass through a first person or third person montage. And we can actually get rid of these because we used a C++ version of them. So let's get our unequipped, or this is equipped. So get our equipped anim first P and get our equipped anim third P, and then get our unequipped. And there we go. Whoop, wrong one. Get the anim 1P and get the anim third P. And let's plug these puppies into their right places. Whoops, that's upside down here. And let's see what they have for default here. They didn't have any defaults, so this unequipped montage had a default for third person. So let's go ahead and navigate to it just to get it into our memory bank. And let's go to the unequipped third person here and just hit this arrow. That'll equip it for us. And then we can go ahead and get rid of these variables here. Compile that, and that is looking good. I believe in order to test this, we need to just create, and I believe this video is getting long, but in order to test this, just so I can think if maybe we can do it real quick before I end the video. In order to test this, we need to actually create a layer for our weapon, which already exists. So maybe we don't even need to create a layer for our weapon. Oh, no, we don't have a first person layer for our weapon. So I think we can fit this into the video. And if it gets a little long, I apologize. But hey, we'll get this done. We won't have to do it in the next video. So Let's go to our asset folders where we did that retarget stuff. Let's go to the base anim layer BP. And what we can do is just make a folder for rifle, say new folder, say rifle. And what I want to do is create a child for this and say ABP. I want to say rifle layers like that and get rid of this L. And this will be our first person rifle layer base. So I'll move this over here into this layer, into this rifles folder. So now if we go to our plugins, shooter core, and we navigate to our actual rifle weapon, which we need to change as well. So we go into rifle, we'll go into the instance, we'll change this first. So here we can give it the first and third person equipment animation sets. So third person is, I think it needs to be reassigned. Yeah, we need to reassign all the values because everything got changed whenever we changed the name of the variable type. So there were some layer rules. We're not going to worry too much about that. I just want to try to test this real fast. So for the equipped anim set third person, let's get the rifle layers, rifle anim layers. That's what they called it. I didn't put the anim in there, so I'll probably have to change that name and structure. So let's grab this rifle anim layers. That's the third person, and let's go and get the unequipped, or I think it's unarmed. So we grab that unarmed layers there, and then for the equipped anim set first person, let's go ahead and grab our rifle layers like this. We'll change the name of that sometime later. And then we didn't create an unarmed for the first person. So let's right click, new folder, say unarmed. Now that I'm thinking about it, oof, this is actually some stuff that we're going to have to set up in the next video. But let's just get this setup done real quick. So unarmed, let's create a child blueprint of this layers class, call it, well, of course, we don't want child in there. Let me just delete all this and we'll say unarmed anim layers FP. And I'm going to drag that in here, move. And I'm actually going to change this here to not base, but it's rifle anim layer. Just try to keep the naming structures the same. So yeah, now we got unarmed anim layer FP and rifle anim layer FP. And now we can actually pass that in to our unequipped anim set, and let's go ahead and say unarmed and just look for underscore FP. You can probably just type underscore FP and it'll pull up all the ones that you want. And we don't have any montages for equipping or unequipping in first person, so we'll go ahead and just bypass that. And then the other thing that we needed to do was actually give the rifle the correct mesh. So what we need to do is pass in the Lyra weapon mesh. So I think it's the rifle, it's just underscore rifle. Yeah, so we need to do this here for the third person and the first person. So, and the last thing that we want to do just to set this up, just so we don't have to do these rudimentary steps in the next video, is go to our characters, heroes. Actually, no, this is located inside of our plugin folder, shooter core, and game. And we have our shooter hero mannequin here. Remember where we set up our first person arms to just use an animation asset. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this reference here and then change this back to animation blueprint. And then we can go ahead and give it the underscore FP. And we only have a few of these. So we have the ABP mannequin base underscore FP. So that'll do that for us. But since we haven't technically set up any of the animation data, this will be in this pose here. So in the next video, that's what I want to do. I want to start working on the animation blueprints and getting the animations all plugged in correctly so that we can test spawning the weapon and then equip into our first person and third person meshes correctly. And then we could finally jump into that programming that we will need for the procedural IKs. So if you guys are ready for that, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.